Hello, everyone. Hello, Miss Jen or Miss Gin. I'm not sure how to pronounce your name. For today, I'm going to go with Miss Gin. I'm calling and videoing from Fallbrook, California. It's in Southern California, about an hour north of San Diego. As you know, our Governor Gavin Newsom has put an order for the entire state of California where we are to shelter in place. So that's what I'm doing. I'm here with my family, my son, his wife, and my 3 grandchildren, 4th grade, 7th grade, and 10th grade. And I also am with my little doggies here. As you can see, I'm a big gardener, and we have a lovely view here in Fallbrook. And my husband is in Fort Worth, where we have purchased our house, and that has an equally beautiful backyard. So I'm very excited to speak with you. I did want to go over my lesson plans with you. I have taught English 3 and English 4 at Bowie High School in El Paso, Texas. I did that for several years. Bowie High School is right there by the El Paso and Juarez border. And so I serviced a lot of children in the area. It was called El Barrio. A lot of children with lots of needs and very brilliant, and happy to say many of them are very successful today, having graduated from college. So I'm going to start with my lesson plans. Really excited to be looking at English 3. But going over my lesson plans, you'll see the unit of study is a Puritan period. My experience with children coming into a class like this has been that, number one, they hate English classes. They hate English 3. They don't want to learn about American literature or American history. So it's very much up to me to change their minds about that and get them excited about doing English 3. Very important is that I teach the proper vocabulary. For example, when I taught English 2, Julius Caesar, it was very important for me before we even started the play that I make study sheets, including all the footnotes, all the vocabulary, and we would work on all of that. I would train them. We would work in class together, and then we would do quizzes, and then ultimately a large test regarding the footnotes and the vocabulary. So by the time we start Act 1, Scene 1, it's much more easily read, understood. The kids enjoy it, and they recognize many, many, many words. So here in my lesson plan on page 4, under vocabulary, I have such things as allusion, illusion, imagery, figures of speech, conformist, nonconformist, and so forth. Several things that are going to be brought out not only in the introduction to the Puritan period in the literature book, but also in the writings and the readings. So especially when we're talking about the government, England, New England, colonization, monarchy, constitutional monarchy, Great Britain. What does that mean next to England or Britain? What is Great Britain? Democracy, republic. So just very hefty vocabulary in English 3 that I would like to attack and have the kids know. And again, it will make them more comfortable when we do get into the study. I don't know who the American literature teacher, the American history teacher will be, but I certainly would love to collaborate with him where I'm teaching the literature that relates to the historical period that he or she would be teaching. So back to page 1. Real important to know why the Puritans came to America. And to understand that, we have to go back to England. And it's very important for us to even go back to the 1500s, where King Henry VIII, who was married to the Spanish queen, Catherine of Aragon, decides he doesn't want to be married anymore, and he wants to take on a new girlfriend, her name Anne Boleyn. He asks the Pope, so we go into the Catholic Church, we go into what he went through trying to get a divorce. And of course, the Pope denies a divorce. So King Henry VIII, being who he is, decides to get rid of the Pope, get rid of the church, create his own church, the Church of England, which is a Protestant church, and he makes himself the head of that church. But pretty much the kids need to understand that England has been Catholic all these years. And so the only real difference in the church is the fact that we no longer have a Pope. So here we come in with all the ceremony, all the beautiful things about the Catholic Church. And the Puritans decide they don't like that. They want to have their own church that totally gets away from anything that is ornate, ceremonial, and thus they want a simplified church. And that is one reason they come. They also had problems in England because they didn't agree, so they were protesting Henry VIII, the church, and so they came to find religious freedom. Many of them came to have their own land, and many of them were sent over because England didn't want them anymore. They were filling the prisons as well. So all kinds of people came from Europe and England. When the American Puritans came, I'm still on page 1, we're talking about the beginning of the 13 colonies. I would like them to know which ones they are. And then we will go into the Revolutionary War, just touch upon that at the beginning, where the kids understand that actually America had a king. We had King George III, and they call him the Mad King, and we would go into that for when it was time. But it was he who was defeated when we won the Revolutionary War. And the reason I put that in is because I went to find SAT tests, samples of them regarding English 3. And I thought this one was really interesting. If we go to page 3, the SAT question 1, it says, describe how Revolutionary era literature differed from the literature produced by the Puritans. And so here is your answer. The Puritan literature was composed of diaries, biblical allusions, simplistic writing style. These Puritans were certain in their beliefs, many small details, a lot of historical accounts, and the purpose of writing was to document history and reveal the glory of God. Very plain, very religious writing. And so, on the other hand, the revolutionary literature, and here we have the time period in the 1700s, it was about gathering support for the Revolutionary War by instilling pride and patriotism in American citizens. Political pamphlets instilled American pride, defined an American mission centered around the birth of America. So I went ahead and stuck it in there because my experience tells me that many times in standardized testing, you will see the same questions. I put it in there to get it through to the kids and get it taught. Also, question 2, this was an SAT question as well. What is the meter of this poem? So I can include a few definitions having to do with meter. And I will read this a little bit here. So they give the students a poem, and they're to read the poem and try to decipher what the meter is of the poem. So Prospect of the Future Glory of America by John Trumbull. Excuse me. To view far distant and to scenes more bright, along the veil of time extend thy sight, where hours and days and years from yon dim pole, wave following wave in long succession roll. So by this time, I will have taught the students what iambic pentameter is. This is the meter that Shakespeare uses for many of his poems. One example would be in Julius Caesar when Mark Antony is speaking to the crowd, and they're angry because Caesar has been mutilated in the Senate. And he comes and he says, of course, he was not part of that, but he says, I come not to bury Caesar, but to praise him. There's your iambic pentameter. And here it is, I will explain like this: to views far distant and to scenes more bright. Iambic pentameter is 5 off-on beats, like this: off-on, 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 off-on. When you have 5 of those off-ons, in a line of poetry or prose, you have iambic pentameter. So I will say it one more time. I come to bury Caesar, not to praise him. That's iambic pentameter. So, back to English 3. In my research in creating lesson plans for the students, I'm always on the internet looking at standardized test questions. With juniors and seniors, of course, it would be the ACT or the SAT. And so whenever I find something, I'll throw it in as a quick study at the beginning of the period, explain very quickly and teach very quickly what I have found, just to make sure I can cover every single thing that is possible to cover. So I'm on page 2 of my lesson plan. Who were the Puritans? So I'm reminding them who they are. In this list, I would like to, the kids would have a similar list, but here is where I would teach parallelism, and that has to do with all the list items being parallel. Notice that each sentence or each group or each line starts with a verb. Immigrated, sought, came, believed, lived, all the believed, focused, believed, focused, believed. So whenever the kids are to make a list, they must use parallelism. Each line begins with a gerund, each line begins with a verb, with a noun. They must all be parallel. So that means similar in structure. So we go to the standards, and I have listed them here, all having to do with English 3. Okay, and then I would like to go to exit ticket. So when the students come in, I've taught with many teachers, and many know so much about their subject matter. The problem seems to be with the fact that several are not. They know everything, they just can't get it through to the kids, and they can't get the kids excited about it. English 3 is one of those subjects. We have to work hard to get the kids engaged and excited. That is one reason I did in the vocabulary mention Marilyn Monroe, Arthur Miller. And so when we get into the period of the Salem witch trials, before I go any further, I do want to tell you that my classrooms are full. All the walls have maps. So here we have the United States, and here we have England. It's just so important. I remember learning in high school, I would learn, but I never knew where I was. So I want them to know where they are when I'm teaching. So we'll start with here, Great Britain. It's important because they're going to be focused on this map as seniors with British Lit. But I would like them to know England, and I will work them England, Scotland, Wales, Ireland. Again, England, Scotland, Wales, Ireland, English Channel, France. Again, England, Scotland, Wales, Ireland, English Channel, France. And so I like to create little hand signals for them. So when I go like this, they know what I'm talking about. Excuse me. So I will go England, Scotland, Wales, then Ireland. So I'll go England, Scotland, Wales, Ireland, English Channel, France. So when they come in for a quick little warm-up or I'm saying hello to them, I will go like this. I may call them as a group at the beginning. I may call them one at a time. And so they all know the map. And so when we get to the British colonies, right here, something similar will happen. Let me interject at this point. When we do grammar, it's real important if we're going to get to the level of creation or the creating of sentences on standardized tests. It's important they can look at the sentence and see. I'll have a sentence on the board and I will ask questions like, where do you find the adverbial connector? Point for me or read for me the introductory adverbial clause. Or if we're writing a paragraph to begin with, I'll say, I want you to start this paragraph with an introductory adverbial clause. In the second sentence, I want to see a gerund functioning as a subject. In the next one, I want a participle. They have to know their grammar so well that I'm able to do that and they're able to create. And we start like that where I have control over what I'm forcing them to create, not simple little sentences, but beautiful, compound, complex sentences. Of course, we mix them with the simple ones. So I always start with the 56 prepositions. I found many years ago that you cannot give the students a list of 56 prepositions and say, memorize them. And I remember working at Andrews High School in El Paso, and it got to the point where we're using the Warner's grammar book, and I would work with column 1, there are 4 columns, and we'd learn them together, and then column 2. By the time we finished that, they'd forgotten column 1. So anyway, created what I call the Villalba signs, and it's like this. Before, behind, below, beneath, beside, besides, between, beyond, but, by. So that's just an example of column 1. When they come in, I can say, okay, take out a sheet of paper. We're going to take a little quiz, 10 questions, and I say nothing. I will say, of course, I want to get them to like quizzes. And when I offer 100 points for whatever it is I want them to know, they become very engaged. And those 100 points are just added and added. Pretty soon, they love quizzes because they want those points. And if I do my job well, they should be getting 100 on every quiz. So take out a sheet of paper, number 1 to 12. What is this? What is this? Number 4. And so once those children learn those 56 prepositions, in a sentence, those prepositions become prepositional phrases. So it's a preposition followed by a noun or pronoun, which functions as the object of the preposition. So on these tests, you will find, when you want to find out, for example, what is being said, what is the theme, what is the message, the kids go through and scratch out all the prepositional phrases. There are many, many in a sentence. They get rid of that. Now they can find the subject. Now they can find the verb, because the subject and verb are never found in a prepositional phrase. So to me, the students learning prepositions are very much like students in math learning the multiplication table. As we all know, you can't go very far without knowing the multiplication table. Same thing in English and grammar. So, back to my lesson plan. I think I've covered everything. The students do have homework. I don't like to just assign homework all the time if they don't understand what's happening. So it's important that they do their homework, but I want them to, I need to start their homework with them at the end of the period. By then I've already given a little quiz, I've taught, they've participated, they've collaborated. I'm getting a feeling that they feel pretty strongly about what I've taught that period. If I see these eyes, that's telling me I need to reteach. I need to see the eyes full of knowledge and confidence, and it makes them feel so good. My experience has been that my students learn to like English 3 and English 4. I have to work very hard to make that happen. But in the end, it's a great, wonderful time to analyze. For example, the Scarlet Letter, Nathaniel Hawthorne's Scarlet Letter, very severe writing, but I've got to make it exciting for them. And the fact that we will be working with the history teacher to understand what happened in Salem, Massachusetts during that period. The reality is very intense. We do the same thing with the Crucible, and I was talking about Marilyn Monroe being married to Arthur Miller, the author. So Arthur Miller was very interested in this time period, and actually went to the files, went to the court house and found the files, the actual files and writings and the notes taken during these trials, and he wrote the play The Crucible. With that, I usually sit with the kids and I begin reading it. I will take a part, they will take a part, and we begin. And it's not dry reading. It's like we have to act it out a little bit to make it come to life. And it becomes great fun. Great fun. I think that's all I have for you. If you have any more questions, I hope I've done this appropriately. If you need to have it redone, please let me know. I'm very excited about applying for your school. I read nothing but good things, and the environment is very enticing for me. It's near my new home over there in Fort Worth, and the fact that there is Mass, I don't know, it's just very exciting to me, and I hope to be a part of your organization. Thank you so much. Nora Linda Villalba.